Good evening, folks, and welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shiloh, and I got my trusty co-host with me, as usual. How are you, Mr. Marv?
I'm doing pretty okay for a fantastically frigid Friday.
I was just thinking to myself, watching our intro, that fire looks like it's pretty warm. I wish we kind of had it right now, huh?
Yeah, well, if it stays like this tomorrow, our fireplace is going to be running.
Yeah, I hear you. I wish I had a real fireplace. Mine's electric, so
No, there's nothing better.
I hear you. I hear you. So yeah, it's been cold up here. I don't know. I think it was like -30 or something like that with the real feel. I know it was cold enough by the time I left my office to get in my pickup. I was cold already, so that's pretty cold.
Yeah, the like 2 feet you walk to your truck.
Oh, that's more the 2 feet. It's like 7,
Okay.
maybe 10.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason we live where the air hurts our face.
Well, I don't know what the reason is, but I guess I'll take your word for it.
Well, hopefully soon it will be not paying property tax. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We got Rick joining us. I see him hanging out backstage here, so we'll get him on in just a moment. But yeah, other than that, just quick recap. We have Ben Koppelman and the rest of his crew on next week, Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Off Friday. And then the following Tuesday, give me a second because I don't want to mispronounce a name here. We will have the candidate from District 32 on that just announced. And this is my day, folks. I can't find anything when I need it. Oh, Shiloh, did you catch his name?
No, I didn't.
Wow, I suck. I will find it. We actually have a challenger in 32 coming up, which is awesome because he'll be running for House and he'll be up against either Heinert or Meyer. And as soon as I have his name,
He's a younger guy too, isn't he?
It's really nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There we go. Philip Jacobs.
There you go.
Is Jake Phillips or Philip Jacobs? That's why I was looking. But yeah, Philip Jacobs is announcing his intention to run for District 32 House of Representatives from Dickinson. Moved to Bismarck in 2017, pursuing a bachelor degree in political science. Later, his master's degree in business administration. So, I mean, kids put in some work just on his schooling, and then previously worked with North Dakota House of Representatives as a clerk where he assisted lawmakers in the legislative process. So, I mean, we got somebody that's already had a little bit of training.
Got some talent there, it sounds like.
Yeah, so we'll have him on in 2 Tuesdays. So, but I think with that, we've kept Rick waiting long enough, so let's get him on.
All right, here we go.
How are you doing, Rick?
I'm doing good. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great.
We can. So thanks for being on this evening.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
You're kind of a regular. I think it's like number 4 or 5, 6, somewhere in there. I think you're probably our most. You're the guest with the most appearances. So
wow, it's like on Saturday Night Live. They talk about if you're a 5-timer, you're in the circle. Yeah.
Well, be careful because I was on about that many times, and then all of a sudden now I'm on the show. So when you're fired, we'll hire you next.
Right. Oh.
I don't know how to take that, but we'll just roll with it.
Come on, it's a running joke. Luke gives you crap for it every time.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, my buddy Luke. What can I say?
Right. So how are things going, Rick? How was Christmas? How was New Year's?
It was good. All 4. I have 4 kids. They're all grown, and They don't presently live in North Dakota. I'm hoping one day they come back, but they all came back with their significant others and 3 grandchildren. It was a very nice Christmas. New Year's was pretty darn quiet, but that's what happens when you get old. Actually, we had a couple of the kids were still here, and we watched some football and made some apps, which I have to say they were some of the best apps I've had. We could have served those at a restaurant. My wife and my daughter-in-law really deserve some props.
Speaking of apps and cooking, my wife wanted me to let you know that she would like to see you do one of your lives again while you're cooking. She thought that was pretty inspirational.
I should do another one. I don't know why, but sometimes people like it. I haven't done one for a long time, but those suckers go on for an hour.
Yeah.
But I think it's just so weird and different that sometimes people like to tune in for a few minutes.
Yep. I'd agree.
Well, you get hungry when you do them, so there's Oh, boy. No, it's been an interesting 3 months already. I know you've it looks like we've gotten a lot of signatures moving forward on the property tax initiative. We are starting to see all the big groups speaking out against it. So I'm sure you were excited to see the League of Cities, the League of Counties, the North Dakota United. I think the chamber even chimed in on their 2 bits on it. So
yeah,
obviously they're afraid of it if they're talking about it.
Yeah, pretty predictable. It's interesting because they use the same arguments that they did in 2012, even though they don't apply anymore. And it's also, I think, really interesting, Marvin. They will not have a forum where there's like back and forth, or certainly much less a debate. They will not discuss it where they can be challenged or even have further discussions or counterpoints. They refuse to do it. Literally, they refuse to do it. I've been told directly by some of the lobbyists that, if it gets on the ballot, then they'd be willing to do it. But right now, well, and the way one of them put it, I just have to put in the work. They said, I have to put in the work, meaning me, and get it on the ballot. And once I do the work, then they'd be willing to have these debates. And I said, well, that sounds fine, except you're going out there and you're giving your points, which are not true. And if you believed in your argument, you would be willing to go out and debate it, because your best chance, you want this to die. Your best chance at killing this is to not even get it on the ballot. And to not get it on the ballot, you would want to squash me in a debate, or to bring out to the public how ridiculous this measure is and how it's going to fail and what the problems are going to be. If you had the argument and if you believed in what you were saying, you would do that now at every opportunity you could and just kill it dead before it ever got on the ballot. But they cannot. And in fact, it's really, if you were a debate coach or a logic professor, you would cringe at how difficult it is for those in opposition to try and somehow support their arguments.
Yeah, we had Jeff on the other night, and he brought up some solid points about how, like, the larger communities are going to have easier ways to increase their funding, stuff like that, versus the rural communities. But at the same point, I look at a lot of the larger communities that we have and the excess spending that they're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings up kind of a question is, if they have this excess already, why aren't they paying back their mills? Why aren't they rolling that money back into the state coffers? Why aren't they, instead of just spend?
Right. Well, but I disagree, though. I don't think it's easy to say that the rural communities are going to have a tougher time and they're going to get hurt. But that doesn't work for me, because right now, rural communities and urban communities are levying property tax. Yep. And they're levying it to the people in those communities. So going forward, every person in that community is going to be able to keep what they're paying in property tax. So every person in every community is benefited. and then to raise the revenue that they need going forward in the future years, which again, the state replaces it every single year going forward, but they'll have increasing needs, right? Inflation, they would have raised the revenue for those increasing needs by taxing the property owners with property tax. So going forward, they'll be able to still tax the property owners with the reformed type of tax that this measure requires, which means no valuation, no mill levies. But you still tax the people in your community. They're the ones receiving services. They still have skin in the game. They still bear the responsibility for paying for the services that they receive. This doesn't change how society works. This reforms how we tax, and we get away from the valuation aspect, the mill aspect. But the rural communities would have taxed the people that are there. They're still going to tax the people that are there. There's no benefit that for urban versus rural. Now you could say, well, but urban could do sales tax. Well, they could, but that's very difficult to do. They're more likely going to resort to the property owners that were already paying the tax and just do it with the reformed method of taxation.
Yep. And so like I understand where you're at with it. And you look at just my street. If you take the average of what I'm getting charged for sales tax versus the houses that run along the street that I live on, that property tax equals $250,000 in Bismarck for the houses along our street. And that's 65 houses, I think, 60 houses averaging at $4,500, $5,000 a year in property tax. And you look at that amount, but when you start breaking it down, a lot of it's schools, a lot of this other stuff that's kind of rammed in there. And so for us, we look at what's happening with Bismarck schools with the audits. We look at what's going on in Williston with the audits. We look at the other schools and how much excess they've had. I've done FOIA requests on some of the smaller schools too, including like Max, just trying to get ESSER funding and receipts and what they spent it on. And it's amazing how much they will fight you to give you any information. It took a week and a half for me to get the ESSER funding receipts from Max. And the superintendent kept wanting me to show up there in person, and he would gladly go over the numbers. And it wasn't until I pointed out that it was federal funds and he couldn't do this as an open records request, that it had to be a FOIA, because that's the way I had asked for it. All of a sudden I got all the receipts, all the spending, how much money they got and where they used it. And I just, it baffles me that we're coming out of our largest session ever for the legislature. Thankfully, you weren't part of that one. But $19 billion spent. And people want to argue about why getting rid of property tax is bad when, as a supposed conservative legislature, we should be spending less, you would think.
Yeah. Well, and I've pointed out how it's, to me, the starkest, easiest example is to compare North Dakota spending to South Dakota spending. In 2002, all the way through 2009, we were tracking right along with South Dakota with a small increase in spending every year. And we were spending just a little bit less than South Dakota for every one of those years, 2002 through 2009. Mm-hmm. And then oil money started pouring in, and you can see what we did. We started spending like crazy. And we can say, that, well, some of it was required for infrastructure, and there's there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, fine. I'll grant you that. But now, since 2017-18, we settled out at a new normal. We're back to tracking right along with South Dakota as far as the increasing spending graph looks like, except every single year we're spending a little over $2 billion per year than South Dakota. So we were tracking with South Dakota. We suddenly have tons of oil money, and our new normal is $2 billion more a year. We still have less people than South Dakota. So that just goes to show the money comes in and you find ways to spend it, ways that you then look back and say, well, there's no way we can cut spending. There's no way we can do without giving a private company $125 million for a fertilizer plant. There's no way we can do without giving $3 million to a private company so they can try and reanimate the woolly mammoth. There's just one thing after another. There's no way we can do without $25 million for Buffalo World in Jamestown.
Right.
It's just so we are overspending an incredible amount. And North Dakota is the only state in the union that can replace the property tax at the current level and not have to lose any services and not have to raise or increase any new taxes. There are 2 other states that have initiated measures going on right now to eliminate property tax: Michigan and Nebraska. And I think they're looking at either they're going to have to raise sales tax, or they're going to have to be a little bit more austere in their spending and cut some things. North Dakota doesn't have to. We've got so much money. And so it's a no-brainer. It's people's number one concern, number one complaint. We've got the money to do it. It's no-brainer.
Yeah. And I shake my head every time I have the conversation. Like, I see the pluses, I see the minuses. I understand that we're going to have to fix some stuff here. But like, my biggest thing is we need to spend less on a local level. Somebody sent me an email here not too long ago. They had requested how much the auditor makes in Stutzman County. And granted, I understand the role of the auditor, their job, everything else that they do, but just in Stutzman County, their auditor there, their county auditor, has a current salary of $106,000 a year.
Say that one more time.
$106,000 a year
for an auditor.
Sweet gig, man.
Yeah, well, and considering we see more and more counties where they're pushing to make this an unelected position where they aren't responsible to the people thanks to home rule charter, that's a little scary. Because at that current salary, up until they gave the Secretary of State a pay raise, was only about $8,000 off what the Secretary of State makes annually. But he got a raise this last session.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But yeah, I don't think it's what we hear a lot of is that rural communities are going to be hurt, and I appreciate Jeff's concerns, but I think his is more of a gut. He just has this sense that rural communities are going to be hurt. But I think unless you can articulate specifics, there certainly is no reason to hold off on a full-throated support of this measure. The idea that everybody in every small town gets to keep that money in their pocket is a winner.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And like, he's still supporting it. He's still moving forward with it. He's like, he goes, I got to see the numbers. He's like, I see the numbers. I talked with Rick. I know the numbers. He goes, but I'm worried about what will happen. And I don't know if I'd necessarily be as worried about it if we had a more conservative legislative body taking place, because when you were there, you guys had 13 people that we could count on, 14 maybe.
Well, but here's where I go to. You don't need a conservative. I mean, the legislature is not in the equation.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I'd ask you, because the legislature truly is not in the equation. The replacement is the amount that was levied in 2024. So they have no say. There's no strings attached. They can't play games. The tax commissioner says, okay, here's what every city, county, school division levied in 2024. This is what you replace. So even if the Democrats took a majority, it doesn't change anything.
So,
okay.
No, I'm all for it. You know that.
I know. No, I know. And I know Jeff is supportive too, and I really appreciate Jeff and everything that he's doing in the legislature. But what I'm saying is we have to get past just kind of like this holding back, this trepidation and worry. And unless we have clear data to support that, we need to move forward. This is too good for North Dakota to hold back.
Exactly. How's signature collection going?
It's going good. I would like it to be better, but it's grassroots effort. We're not paying anybody. It's frankly, it's disorganized. It's just a lot of people that care that are doing their best to get signatures. We are a little over halfway of what the Secretary of State requires, what the state requires, and a little less than halfway for what our goal is, because we know they're going to throw some out. And so call it halfway. And we are also halfway with the timeline. So I think we're fine. We're perfectly fine. In fact, you could say we're doing good, because in the first couple of months of ramping up, July, August into September, there was very few of us getting signatures. And so the fact that we've got certainly over 15,000, maybe nearly 20,000 signatures, I think is a testament to the fact that we have momentum and it's increasing rather than people starting to lose interest. It's quite the opposite.
It's got to be the cold weather.
Yeah, well, we're still getting it, but yeah, well, I don't know we're going to be getting too much today or tomorrow, but
I think it has a lot to do with like the tax statements coming out.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
their increases, and
Very much so.
Go ahead.
What's the biggest concern that you're hearing out there, being in the front lines? Like, obviously the rural areas, but what are the biggest concerns that you're hearing?
The biggest concern initially is local control, because that's what people keep hearing. And it's funny, when I was in Maddock on Sunday, and there were maybe, 60, 70 people there. And I think at least 4 were county commissioners, and there was one school board member, one township board member. And I think they were all very concerned, somewhere between very concerned and very, very opposed to it. And after throughout the discussion, I talked for over 2 hours with them, answering questions. And my perception is that they moved definitely in the direction of favoring the measure. I'm not going to say they all favor it, but they clearly are much less opposed, and some are favoring it. The discussion really showed that when you break it down and have an honest discussion, in many ways, the locals have greater control. Now, I've said before that the most important local is the individual, who has more control, which is absolutely true, because when we get away from valuation and mills, and the city and county commissions need to have a public meeting when they want to talk about implementing a fee or tax, and you have public input, so on and so forth, much more control for the individual. But for the actual cities and counties, there are so many restrictions with the way we do property tax, incredible restrictions. The valuations, of course, they don't have control over. They have to be within a narrow band of a sales ratio. They have to be, right close to 95%. So that's controlled. Even if the commission says, well, we're doing all right, we want to not raise people's valuations. Well, the state will come in and force you to raise the valuations. So then if they say, well, we're doing all right, then we can't lower the valuations, let's just lower the mills. Well, the state says fine, but then they lose road funding, they lose some school funding, so they feel compelled to not lower the mills or to raise the mills. There's so many restrictions on the locals now with property tax. When you take that away and you say, okay, the new method is you implement a tax to the property owners, a fee, whatever you need to do. There's a million ways to work it out. You figure it out, whatever's best for your township, your city, your school district, your county. And it's up to the people. You have a public meeting. It's up to people that say, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. That's total control. The state no longer controls you. So to continue with the answer, Shiloh, local control is one, but we can dispense with that concern very quickly. Right along with that, despite going over things a lot, I keep hearing, well, but we're going to lose services. We won't be able to hire teachers. We won't be able to hire a policeman or buy a fire truck. And again, I say, why would you not? You are not losing any funding. The state is replacing everything what you raised up to this point, and you have the full ability to raise anything you need above that. So why would you need to cut anything? When we get away from local control, Well, then we can talk about sustainability. People say, well, but the oil is going to dry up and then we're going to be screwed. My answer there is, if the oil dries up, we are screwed because we're spending everything now. We haven't changed our economy. We haven't done anything different or new. We do know, when we should have an honest discussion, oil's not going to dry up in the next 10 years or 15 years. We know that Harold Hamm is investing and planning on oil to be around for 50 years. But if let's just arbitrarily say it's going to be around 25 years. If we don't do something different in North Dakota and oil dries up in 25 years, we go back to the North Dakota of the 1990s, where out-migration was the number one problem. It's all we talked about. We're losing all our young people. Everyone's moving away from North Dakota.
Yeah.
Because we didn't change the paradigm in North Dakota. You implement this, North Dakota becomes the only state with no property tax, and you have young families flocking to the state because of that advantage. You have businesses relocating to North Dakota. They're going from their poor tax environment states. They're looking for the number one state to move to. It's North Dakota. This is how we create economic diversification. This is how we address workforce development concerns. 25 years of this being in place, oil dries up, we're insulated because we've diversified. And so our economy is off the rails. It's going fantastic. Oil dries up. We're in much better shape than if we don't do this. So the concern about oil drying up is actually a support of this measure. After that, then it gets to some difficult to answer concerns, which I categorize in a bucket just called envy. And those are the positions where you say, well, this person, I don't want this person to get a benefit. I like to say a slice of pie. I don't like this category of people. I don't want them to get a slice of pie. And so to prevent them from getting a slice of pie, I don't want a slice of pie. I don't want my kids to get a slice of pie. I don't want my neighbors or friends or family to get a slice of pie because I don't want this person to get a slice of pie. And that could be big business. It could be apartment owners. It could be out-of-state landowners. There's the argument they love. The lobbyists are pushing this argument that Fargo is going to get a favorable deal compared to the other cities. Arguably, if they are, it's minuscule, and it really doesn't matter because this isn't a competition between Mandan and Fargo. The people in Mandan keep everything they're paying in property tax. The people in Fargo keep everything they're paying in property tax. And if we're going to have lobbyists and elected officials try to convince us to turn down what's in our best interest because we're worried someone else got a slightly better deal, that would be very unfortunate. There's another very false argument that's being put out there, and especially for your guys' audience, it's lobbyists have said this, and interestingly, elected officials, legislators are parroting it. I don't know if they believe it or what. And that is, hey, we shouldn't do this because there's a risk we could lose the oil production tax, which is a half of all of the oil taxes. They say we're going to lose the oil production tax because it's in lieu of property tax. So their argument is, well, if there's no property tax, how can there be an in lieu of property tax? And maybe we're going to go to court and they're going to take it away. The problem is that this argument, this made up fear, has been fully addressed publicly by the Legislative Council, the lawyers at Legislative Council, in a memorandum drafted in 2012. And it completely debunks it. The oil tax is not going away at all. It's a done deal. There's no concern. It's a made up thing to stir anxiety among people that we could lose the oil tax. The final thing I'll say is that there is a concern. It goes back in the envy box, but it's the out-of-state landowners. But it's not just the envy part of not wanting them to get a good deal. It's the reasonable concern, if it were true, that out-of-staters are going to buy up land and it will cause land prices to increase, and they're going to price North Dakotans out of the market and buy up all the land. Now that is, it makes sense as a kind of a knee-jerk or a gut concern. But here's the thing. North Dakotans are in competition with out-of-staters right now for land. There's a certain price. In a lot of areas, it's hugely inflated because of a couple decades or so of socializing the risks with the Farm Bill and crop insurance, which then really drastically increases the prices. But North Dakotans are in competition right now. Out-of-staters, there's enough of them, and they're wealthy enough. If they wanted to buy all of North Dakota, they could. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, but they're not, because they're making financial decisions. Yes, land should become more valuable because you're taking away an expense of holding land, of owning land. And therefore, it should go up proportionately to what the savings are over time, right? So it's going to go up. For instance, with when we look at commercial property, there's what's called a cap rate that you try and determine whether it's a good. I don't know if you use cap rates in agriculture, but this would move the cap rate by 1 full point, right? So there's a very determined amount of increase in value. Here's my point. The increase in value is the same for North Dakotans as it is for out-of-staters. You're competing now. Out-of-staters can buy up the land if they want. The land becomes more valuable to in-staters and out-of-staters equally. So you will continue competing for land. The benefits are there for both of you equally. There's no distinct advantage, no advantage at all for out-of-staters that residents of North Dakota won't also see. So given that knowledge, given those facts, why and how would people in North Dakota be at a loss because all the land is being bought up by out-of-staters? Anyway, those are the arguments.
Fear is that people like Bill Gates and these guys, these multi-billionaires, come in and just bulldoze everybody.
But they could do it now.
Yeah.
And here's one last thing on that, though, Shiloh. Keep in mind, going forward, this isn't a free lunch forever. This is a significant relief package.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reformed. Remember, we're talking about all of the future property taxes that would have come will still most likely and should be borne by the property owners. So these out-of-staters that own land, yes, they are getting a relief package just like everyone in the state of North Dakota, but they will have to pay their share of the ongoing increasing expenses. So it's not a free lunch forever. And every year that goes by, of course, those expenses increase. So it's a time-limited experience for out-of-staters if they think this is going to be a gold rush. It just economically, it doesn't make sense.
Well, and the counter argument to that second one you brought up with the lobbyists and the oil extraction tax, I mean, that's pretty simple. The legislature, and I've spoken about this often because it pissed me off, changed the oil extraction tax. They eliminated the increase to 6.5% when West Texas Index hits $90 a barrel, and then they dropped the restimulation wells down to 2 or 2.5%. They tried putting it to 0 for restimulation wells in North Dakota, which equals billions of dollars of lost tax revenue annually. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah, I think we pretty well addressed all of the arguments that come out. It's a matter of making sure people hear the message, and it's a matter of encouraging people that when they have this, well, I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z, that they work it through and say, but is that really? We know that there's a huge benefit. We know that every person that they know in North Dakota is going to get a huge benefit. So they have to move beyond just kind of like this basic concern. It has to be something, if it was something simple in their daily lives and there was a clear benefit, unless there's a very clear and equal concern, they're going to take the benefit. And that's the way we need to look at this.
I had someone reach out to me, and I don't know if it was at one of your talks or whatever. I guess you were talking about if you take, and again, I wasn't there, so he asked me to ask you this. Something about specials.
Yep.
If they enforce, you know what I'm talking about?
Well, there's a couple of questions I get with specials.
Okay, well, this one is can they take your house away if you don't pay the specials?
Okay, so that's one of the questions. Currently, in state law, in the Century Code, they can foreclose on your house for not paying specials. The reason, not, I shouldn't say the reason for that, but it's, I see it as, I'll just say the reason for it is because specials are put in a lump with property tax, and property tax is specifically designed to where they can foreclose on your house. Now, when the property tax, all the property tax statute goes away in Century Code, the foreclosing for property tax also goes away. I'm working with legislators to introduce a measure which these future taxes we're talking about, which are more fairly applied to property owners, that there is no foreclosure, but they can put a lien on the property. And at the same time, then it's a very, very simple change, but they need to change specials to be the lien as well. In my opinion, the lien is fair. If you're going to be applying it doesn't even matter whether you call it a tax on property, whether you call it a fee for services. If you don't pay it, just like if you don't pay a contractor for services, they put a lien on your property. I'm okay with that. But I am not okay with someone getting kicked out of their house because they can't afford the increased valuations, or someone being kicked out of their house because they can't afford to pay property tax. But once they sell their house, or if they pass away and the house then is sold, then the local subdivision should be able to recoup the fees that person didn't pay.
As far as what you mean, as far as the specials, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the short answer, Shiloh, simply is yes. In Century Code right now, you can foreclose on property for specials. We plan to fix that with a very simple change.
Okay.
That brings up another question. So say we gather all our signatures. Awesome. We get this passed. Awesome. It does that timestamp at the end of the year, right? At the end of 2024, at the beginning of 2024.
Well, so the measure goes into effect January 1st, 2025.
Okay. So we have that timestamp. What about people that are already in a tax foreclosure situation? Is that going to kind of put a stop or put that on hold, or are they already?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. In the documents I reviewed over the last many years, including 2012, the lawyers at Legislative Council believe that when this measure passes, the people that are in foreclosure, the people that owe property taxes, regardless of in foreclosure or not, will still owe those taxes and will still be in the foreclosure process.
Okay. So, and that's just, it's a solid question to ask because you don't have somebody just rolling into foreclosure banking on this thing to pass where all of a sudden they're okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a very good question. Don't let yourself fall into arrears because you think, it's going to be like student loan debt that Biden just forgives. The property tax will not be forgiven.
Yeah.
So one thing that I find interesting with this is talking to people about this, and they're worried about the things that you're saying, like losing local control and where the service is going to come from. And then you bring this sheet out, the wasteful spending.
Yep.
And you hand it to them, and their face kind of goes blank. And so I'm just wondering, do you talk much about the wasteful spending when it comes to this this measure? Because you bring up a lot of points here, and it's very, black and white.
Yep. And
so I'm just wondering if you do use that, and if you do, what's the reaction?
There's that. I have a new, it's not on the website yet, but a new graph that for North Dakota, South Dakota spending that goes to the 2002, like I talked about. That's impactful. People are surprised at that. They're like, wow, that really says a lot. And then when I go through some of the itemized things there for the poor corporate welfare, bloated government, they're really taken aback. And you can go, this is just this last time that's on there. If we go back to further years, you can talk about how North Dakota has spent on on a ski resort, up in the northeast part of the state. You can just tons and tons of things. So much money going to private businesses. And so, yes, the response is wow. Then they get a little more passionate about it. But there's just so much to cover, Shiloh. So much to cover.
There is. So we got a question here. Why are the realtors not for ending property taxes?
Well, I don't know that they're not. So in 2012, they were opposed to it. I don't know why, but they spent money lobbying against the measure in 2012. But so did builders and banks. And I think all the lobbyists, just went out and had some drinks and said, hey, let's just all support each other. But going with this one on Thursday, I think it was, I spoke to, or maybe it was Wednesday, I'm sorry. I spoke to the North Dakota Association of Realtors and answered their questions, talked for a little over an hour. The opposition was also going to speak. We were not permitted to ask each other questions or do counterpoints. I just presented my case. And then they are planning to come up with whether they're in favor or opposed to the measure. Now, if they have any sense at all, they'll be in favor of the measure. There are, I would categorize two groups of people that to me, I mean, all of North Dakota is going to benefit, but if you're talking about specific industries, realtors and all of the construction trades are going to benefit hugely for the first 10 years, hugely. And so I don't know. We'll find out what the North Dakota Association of Realtors says. They may be influenced by other lobbyists. I don't know. If they do oppose it, I can tell you that there are many individual realtors that are in favor of the measure. They realize the benefits that they're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Now, something Jeff brought up too is because it is a constitutional measure, there's 7 years after it goes into place that they can't address or redress issues that come up in it, correct?
Well, no. So when there's an initiated statutory measure, the legislature can't change it for 7 years unless they have a 2/3 vote of both chambers. Mm-hmm. And then they can change it on day one, which we did for medical marijuana because that was a statutory measure. So this is a constitutional measure. You can't change the Constitution without a vote of the people.
Okay. Good. And that's good clarification too, because like I said, it's stuff that we have brought up.
Yeah. People are very concerned about the legislature screwing it up. But the thing is, they can't. They can't.
Well, look at term limits. I mean, how much fight did we have over term limits this last session? We had 1,000 other bills that we needed to consider. That's
it. That's a very good point, Marvin. If they had the ability to change a constitutional measure, they would have changed that one.
Yeah.
They don't have. There's no ability. They're stuck. What they could have done is passed a legislatively initiated measure to change the Constitution again to something that they wanted, and then have that go to a vote of the people. That's the best they can do.
Yeah. And like, it's crazy when you look at like even term limits. When we spoke with Jeff and those guys the other night, they're running for election, but they're all making it sound like it's their last term already because they've had 2 years because of redistricting. Now they're going to have 4 years, and they've been being told already that they can't run for another term again. And I kind of laughed about it a little bit because your opponent last year, 2 years ago now, sorry, we're in 24. John just entered his 12th year as a senator, even though it's in our century code that you can only be seated for 12 years. And like, is anybody going to tell him he's got to go home?
Right. Yeah, it's funny. North Dakotans want term limits, and all of the elected officials statewide are in favor of it, except when it applies to them. Even Governor Burgum, right? I'm in favor of the term limits, and he took credit for it. He didn't do a damn thing. And also, it doesn't apply to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't run again. Maybe he's not going to run again. I don't know, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. But I think that's right. Those people that have gone for 2 years, they only can do this next term of 4 years. Now, what they could do, say you were talking about Jeff, what Jeff could do is then after being in the Senate for 4 more years, he could go to the House and run for a House seat and be in that seat for 8 years.
Yeah. And it's nuts when you think about it, because we had redistricting, which forced a lot of legislators back into 2-year seats. Definitely targeted a lot of the conservative legislators. I mean, it was pretty obvious with the maps.
Yep.
But now you're not only limiting them there, you're forcing them to run 2 years later, and you're only going to give them a 4-year crack when some of these people are going to be able to ride out their 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's frustrating to think that we're going to lose good people that fast.
Yep.
And
well, it's there's circumstances where it's even worse than that. People that are, for instance, the people that are not finishing out their term. Cole Christensen is leaving.
yeah,
Whoever he gets replaced with is going to be able to do this 1 year, and then they'll only have, so they have less than a year and then only 4 years.
yeah. Well, and he's not the only one. Larry Blues announced his retirement. There's a couple of them that are leaving already. So, but back to like the property tax stuff, wasteful spending. My biggest fan is the fact that Health and Human Services and the schools take up the lion's share of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I know you address a lot of the stuff with the schools, but are there areas of Health and Human Services where you can see reductions too at $6.5 billion?
Yeah, you can cut both. Let me just go on a tangent slightly here, because a lot of times what we hear about is the general fund, right?
Yep.
And we can't. You have to talk about the general fund, because that's where the spending is, and it's such a crock. And they tried to, John Nelson, Representative Nelson, and Senator Klein, when I was in Maddox, tried to use that ploy, say, no, you're not being fair. You're talking about all funds, and I said, look, in North Dakota, as well as I do, that we have 2 general funds. There's the general fund, and then there's the SIF fund, which we use like a second general fund. And in fact, we all talk about it. Burgum even talked about it being a second general fund. He called it a second checking account. We have 2 general funds. So we have to be sure that we're not playing their game and saying, yeah, we somehow have to come up with this money from the general fund. Not true. But despite that, yes, there's places to cut in education. People, oh my God, you can't cut education. Well, we spend far more per student, per pupil, than our neighboring states, but we are not faring any better in testing. So what's happening is, because we have so much money, we're throwing money at K-12, because no legislator is going to have the fortitude to say, wait a minute, we shouldn't do that unless we can show outcomes, unless we can show benefit from doing this. And so it just gets thrown without any, requirements, looking for, are we getting a return on our investment of the students? And I would argue we aren't. So there's a lot of money being wasted there. Not to mention, if you go to higher ed, oh my God, that's separate from K-12. Wow, talk about a ton of wasted money in higher ed. That I could talk for an hour on that, so I'll move on. Human services, yeah, there's a lot of their budget we're stuck with, right? You've got the FMAP, the Medicare, Medicaid formula and all that. But there is a lot of administrative bloat, and there are a lot of highly paid lawyers and redundancy. And so, yes, you can cut there. If you look at over the last 12 years, the increase in the agency budgets, it makes your head spin. When I was in the legislature in 2013, 2015, and 2017, especially, we were seeing agency budgets. So I had this thing, and I know it's going to sound like, gosh, that doesn't sound very scientific, Becker. But I didn't want to be like saying no to every single budget, right? I wanted to be able to say, okay, I'm saying no to the worst of the worst budgets. And so I would have a thing where, okay, if they don't increase their FTEs and they don't increase their budget by more than 10%, now 10% normally would be a big increase, I'll vote for it. And I still voted against the vast majority of budgets because they were 15, 20, 25, 30, 35% increases each time. And, the next time they were a 30% increase on top of the 30% increase from the time before. So there's agency bloat. There's this time around, I forget my numbers. I've looked at so many things. I've looked at every page of the budget. But I think if I remember right, they had something on the order of like 366 new FTEs. So the full-time equivalents that they hired this last time around. To me, that says a lot. You don't need to keep growing government like that.
I think I talk to Jason a lot, or as Joel calls him, the hike camp of the Jason variety.
It cracks me up.
Jason a lot, and one thing that he brought up, like, it's a simple budget adjustment, but saves the state almost over $250,000, is eliminating the state health officer and appointing the dean of UND Medical School the state health officer.
Sure. Yeah.
And
you can do away with half of the Department of Health budget. That's nothing but a propaganda machine for the whole public health COVID, crap, along with, for some reason, all of the LGBTQIA2+ crap. They're just a big propaganda machine. They should have their budget slashed. I'm saying that as a physician.
Yeah, Shiloh's got some numbers here for us too.
Yeah, so speaking of the schools, our final thought, we were going to kind of touch on this, but being as we brought it up, I have some of the numbers from some schools around the state, and as we all know that Nicole, she's been doing the deal where she's been going on and trying to have people prove her wrong, and she came out with the Insights website. So I want to give her credit for that, because when I ran for school board a couple years ago, they actually took this website down. We couldn't find any numbers, and so I'm waiting for it to disappear. But I just want to show you here a couple of the schools. Let me share my.
Push the button, Shiloh.
I am trying to do anyway.
StreamYard's fun, huh?
Yeah, it is. You got to select what you want to share first. So we'll start with, this is Williston.
It says Dickinson.
Right? No, this one's Williston. I moved over. It says Dickinson?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, just a second. I apologize.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I'm going to read something off real quick. This one went out after the meeting up in Williston on Monday night. If you guys missed it, it was fun. Dear Williston Basin School District 7 community, this communication is to inform our Williston Basin School District number 7 community of a modification to our board meeting format due to the recent disruptive incidences that compromise the safety and effectiveness of our in-person meetings. Regrettably, a few members of the community displayed highly unacceptable behavior during the last board meeting, leading to this necessary change. For the safety of all involved, the Williston Basin School District number 7 board meeting on January 22nd will be conducted virtually in accordance to North Dakota Century Code 440419. On the January 22nd board agenda, the board will discuss the remainder of the meeting scheduled through January 30th, 2024, and what needs to occur to return to an in-person meeting environment that allows for orderly conduct of business. There's more to this, but my question is, are they doing a Zoom, or are they just going to post the meeting, not allow anybody in the room, and do their business when nobody can comment? Because
that's undetermined.
That sounds like a pretty big violation of North Dakota open meeting law. But I don't know. What do you think, Rick?
Well, I don't know the details, but it sounds like, it sounds like people. If there was actual threat of violence, then that's one thing. But what I see a lot of times are these boards don't want they don't want to be criticized, or they don't want to face the music, and they want control, and so then they don't want the public to have their input. But I honestly don't know if they have legitimate concerns or not. I assume that they are doing it like a Zoom and are allowing public input. Otherwise, it seems like they would be not following the laws and guidelines.
So when the president was on with Joel a couple days ago, the first thing out of his mouth was, and I'm just paraphrasing, is he didn't understand why parents needed to be involved. Is basically, why are they showing up? And we actually reached out to him. I sent him an email that day that he was on Joel to see if he would come on the show and talk with us, and he respectfully declined.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even really, I mean, my questions are more of, look at these numbers. If I'm reading this correctly, they're 27% proficient in ELA, which is English language, right? Am I reading that correct as far as the district there?
Well, I'm afraid you can't ask me because I can't read that on my screen.
Marvin, can
you? A way to blow this up.
Let's see here. Maybe if we do this.
There you go.
That
Is
helps.
that better? Okay. Marvin, can you see it?
Novelist, proficient.
The blue.
Yeah.
It would be the blue.
Yeah.
In math, we're 21% proficient, or they are in the district. And in science, they're 27%. So these are the kind of numbers that we're paying for people. The other one I wanted to show you. So I did.
Can you scroll down on that one more time? Because I'm just recognizing now that we can compare the district in reference here, Williston Basin, to the rest of the state. So they're underperforming. The district's underperforming everywhere. Okay.
Yep. Okay, so I got 4 different schools up here. Just a second. I will share the next one. This one I do believe is Bismarck.
Come on, Bismarck.
Nope, this is Ray. So This is the town that I live in. Okay, so we're in Ray. English language, the district is at 29%. The school is at 40 to 49%. On math, we're 33% in the district, and it looks like 19% in the school. If I'm reading that correctly. Can you guys?
Yep.
So Shiloh, something interesting that I've come across looking at other schools just while you're showing these. I was looking at pulling numbers for Hillsborough back when Kit was dealing with their property tax increase. And if you break down the districts out there, they were actually including a Hutterite community, and they have administrators for homeschoolers. So they're trying to roll those numbers into stuff too.
Yep.
Like
it's the only time they respect the homeschoolers is when they can use their numbers to up their own.
Right?
Yeah. This is Dickinson. Dickinson, ELA, you guys are at 31% proficient for your district. You're right at the state level. 29% for math. 31% in science. Now they're pretty neck and neck with the state. So my question to Kirsten is how can we be proud of these numbers?
No, I think they're horrible, but you always want to be fully accurate, right? So you have to, I think, don't forget you need to include the whatever the number above proficient, highly proficient, or whatever that next number was.
Yeah.
You're going to have to add that to the proficient to get your total number that are doing adequately or better, right?
So most of them are anywhere from 9 to 11%. So you can
Right.
add that on. So
And
this was the one that, and Tioga is trying to build. They're like trying to pass an $80 million deal to get a new school. And look at this. ELA is 21% proficient. They got 9% advanced, so they're 30%. Math, they are at a whopping 2%. Not 20, but 2. They're 2% advanced, so they're 4%.
that's crazy.
And they want $80 million to build a new school.
Well,
30
people at
to
Tioga, I
30
mean, wow, you right there. You say you aren't getting a damn dime
No.
until you start teaching our children like you're supposed to.
Yep.
Well,
So
and I've always been a fan of paying our teachers more and our administrators less. I'm you know where I stand on that. It's one of those things where you look at how much superintendents make, and once a superintendent leaves, they still draw a salary from that district forever. From the sounds of it, it's like they treat it like it's a retirement, so they continue to still draw money from that school district even after they've gone on to someplace else. And I just wonder, because you look at how backwards the peers are, the retirement plan. They had 3 different bills this last session where appropriations, which is the other place they spend your money, folks, that doesn't make general budget, is appropriations. 3 different bills to help fix the shortcoming in the retirement plan. But every one of them had a tagline of $250 million at the bottom of them. So if all 3 of them would have passed, which they can't because they were contradicting each other, but if they would have tweaked them all enough just to pass, it would have taken another $750 million and dumped it into the retirement plan to try and fix it from their investment shortcomings that they should have fixed a while ago. So I just, it baffles me when people argue that, where we have the conversation of, well, we're going to lose this or we're going to lose that. And my pushback is, how about we spend less? Because they've been asking us to tighten our belts for the last 4 years. This new normal stuff, I'm over it. They ask us to tighten our belts. They ask us to do less, yet gas goes up, our groceries go up, our taxes go up, our wages not. But yet we're writing a bigger and bigger check every 2 years as a state.
Yep.
So if we keep on our current spending and projection, our next session, we'd be looking at a total budget of about $23 billion. Because if I remember right, in 2020, we were at about 16 billion. This last session, Josh even spoke about, we're at 19 billion. So if we're jumping $3 billion every 2 years as a state for spending, next time around, they're going to be spending 22 conservatively.
Well, keep in mind, right, and at the end of this biennium, end of June last year, they had $3 billion that beyond forecast. So we'll call it $3 billion left over. And the best they could do is give 17% of that in tax relief. They saw that $3 billion and they said, awesome, we can spend this on all these pet projects. We can make buddies with these businesses, but we do have to give some tax relief or we're going to all get kicked out of office. So what should maybe we shouldn't give more than 600 million. No, I think we should not give more than 500 million. That's what the House and the Senate were arguing about. And so what they gave the people was, it's not like they cut spending to give people a tax break, to give people tax relief. They came up with 17% of the leftover money. That was all they could muster. So that's why we have to do this property tax measure. I'll go back to that. We force them to give the relief that they promised us in 2012, and we haven't seen.
Yep. Well, I mean, while they're giving us tax relief, they gave NextEra what, $125 million?
Yep. Yes, indeed.
So 500 million for the people of North Dakota, 125 million for a private company.
For one company. You add up all the companies and it exceeds the amount that they gave to the people of North Dakota.
So I want to show you guys something. When I was running for school board here in Ray, at that time there was a fellow named John Greiner who was running in Williston as well. And he came up with these graphics, and this is some of what is wrong, or maybe all of what is wrong. We can have a discussion on that. I want to see, will that come up? You guys see that?
Yep.
So he made this, and this is our current system right here, where the special interest groups who are writing our curriculums and all that good stuff. And I mean, you can add in your teachers unions. They're pushing this stuff at the federal level and the state level, which would be your DPI and different things like that. They're pushing it on our school boards, which it's just doing the trickle down effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this, and this is, oh, oh goodness. Okay, I still got it up. I'll show you the one that right here. I'm sorry, I got to get better with this. I practiced before the show and it obviously didn't work.
You're just nervous.
Yeah.
At least you're not filling it with ums.
What's that?
At least you're not filling it with ums and so's.
Right. See if I can get it to work now.
Though you keep it up, I'm going to queue up Emperor's New Groove for the pull the lever crunk. Oh, wait, that's copyrighted still. I retract that.
Here we go. All right, so this is how it should work. Where the school board is the umbrella and telling these guys, no, we're going to do, we're going to protect our kids. We're going to let our parents be involved on what curriculum that we're going to do and different things. Obviously, this is when Joe and I was running for District 2 school board, but this is kind of where what it should be. And a lot of people, I mean, including our own government, I mean, and this is some of what I took from the interview that Mr. Junt did with Joel is they don't want parents involved. But this is what we need to get back to in order for things to change. So that also means, in my opinion, that parents need to be accountable too. And they also need to keep their students accountable as well. Mm-hmm. But parents and the school boards, they should be working together. And we should be having less special interest groups and less government in our schools. Period.
We should still be teaching government in our schools and proper process.
Yep.
We want government in the schools as a curriculum, not as a puppet.
As a curriculum, not as an interference.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank John Greiner too. I'll give him credit for those because we did not make those. He let us use those for our campaign when we were campaigning. So
yeah, those are good.
But well, with as far as I guess we got kind of off topic here for you, Rick. Is there anything else that you want people to know about the property tax initiative?
I think we covered it all. I want to make sure people know we have a website, endpropertytax.com. And I encourage people to go there, seek out the answers. Feel free to contact me if you like. There is a place to sign up, make donations. We obviously need donations. In 2012, they got wiped out because they had almost no money and the opposition had a ton of money. But right now at this stage, what we need are people that are willing to get a petition and go out and do the best they can to see if they can get 45 signatures. If not 45, maybe 20. But we do need people to take action. This isn't going to have. This is grassroots, which means the people that are viewing this. And if the people that are viewing this and others like them don't find the initiative or don't think this is interesting or important enough to have the initiative to try and gather signatures, then it's not going to work. This isn't. There's no hero. There's no savior here. It has to be the people of North Dakota doing it for themselves.
I would agree. I would agree.
agree.
Well, I really appreciate your time and effort in all of this. I commend you. I say this every time that you're here, but I commend you. I listened to your interview with Joel as well, and that's not easy to walk into. Um, I don't want to say enemy territory, but people who think a lot differently and be able to. I like how you can diffuse a situation and just stick to your facts, and it's nice to see.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll go on with anyone, anytime, except for one political blogger who has no redeeming characteristics. And so I will not go on with that person. But anyone else, no matter how deeply embedded in enemy territory they are.
You know what, Rick? We should do a cooking show one night once we get past collecting signatures here.
Okay.
I don't know what Shiloh's gonna make. It'll probably be frozen pizza, but
Hey, now.
We could have like this 3 screens that's up right now. We can each be doing our own cooking.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty crazy.
Well, my wife says I can burn boiling water, so I'll start practicing now. So we're ready.
That was just to take a stab.
Cheryl's gonna be in charge of like toast.
Well, I did light one on fire once, but we're not going to talk about that. My daughter still gives me a hard time on that, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks again for your time, Rick. I appreciate it.
All right.
And it's Mr. Rick Becker with the end property tax petition. So, wow, that was a pretty good show, Marv.
Yeah, I want to follow up here real quick, though, Shiloh.
Sure.
That we had talked about earlier.
Sure.
So we already know they're shutting down in-person meetings here for the school board.
The Williston School Board, yes.
I got forwarded an email earlier today. That seems there's still the narrative rolling. I won't read the first part of it because I know it's already out there. But what I kind of found weird was I would prefer that the discussion of our conversation is on what's best for the students and the staff in the district. I'm very aware of the national movement and to disrupt local school board meetings. You folks got to realize that what happened up there on Monday wasn't part of some national movement. That was a lot of folks that were awful angry about $365 million worth of misspent funds. It's a lot of folks that were very upset that 2 school boards were forced to merge into one district, or 2 school districts were forced to merge into one school district. And if you look at it, the original numbers of 8 and 1, it was like 2,600 residents in one section are voting eligible residents and 800 in another.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the smaller district's going to be absorbed. And I have friends that teach up there, and as teachers, they were told that if they didn't vote in favor of the merger, they'd be fired. Which I have no reason to doubt them. They've never lied to me, but that was things that they were told. And what Nicole's going over, if I'm assuming it's the same information that I've collected, and I'm not involved with what she's going on, she's doing a fantastic job presenting it.
Very much so. Thanks again, Nicole, for putting that website up and the directions, because without those directions, it's hard to find the numbers. So thanks again.
But she's going through almost 17 to 1,800 files, folks. Like, if that's the information I'm thinking that she's going through, she's got 1,800 pieces of evidence that she's going to be going through over the course of what she's talking about, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And people just
Is that
don't.
mine or yours?
That wasn't me.
Wonder what they're doing up there. My daughter got her new puppy today, so I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
So, like, pay attention to what Nicole's got going on with her posts, because there's a lot of information that's going to be coming forward, and a lot of you are going to be shaking your head, because it's excessive, the amount of issues that have happened up there. It's the excessive what's happening in all of our schools. So I know it's not the soapbox I wanted to bring out tonight, but
I want to, if I can, I'm trying to get this. Just give me a second here. I want to show this deal that got sent to me. It's an image. It mustn't have went through. Just give me a second. So my other question for Mr. Junt would be, you don't want parents to show up to these meetings, or you don't want, however you want to say that. But he made a comment of, because they were talking about these elections and how they got recalled and all this, and he spoke on the people speaking. They have spoken about who they want. But my question to him that I wanted to ask him was, have they really? Because in my opinion, there's 32,000 people in Williston, roughly, right?
yep.
Somewhere in there. So the first election, they had little over 600, not 6,000, 600 people vote in that election. So this last recall election they had, again, the same 32,000 people. Take a stab at how many people voted in that election.
2,600.
No.
No?
Nope. Little over 1,300.
I was being
Little
generous.
over 30. So my question is, did the people of Williston, of that district, really speak, Mr. Junt? Because in my opinion, they didn't even show up. They didn't know what the heck was going on.
I guess if they ever find an attorney to prosecute what happened up in Williston, we'll find out. But
Well, and that's the other thing I don't think that people are understanding it around the state with this whole deal is this has been going on for a few years now. Correct?
Yeah, it's been out there for at least 3.5 years. What's been going on? And this was long before Josh's audit. It was known that they were forcing these districts together. In fact, if the timeline is true about it, the night that our DPI got her DUI, she was on her way back from a meeting up in Williston talking about these mergers.
By the way, Miss Kirsten Baszler, I'd like to extend an invitation for you to come on, and we'd like to actually interview you too, because I have a lot of questions, being that we're, you're number one, you're running for a re-election, but I really like to know what your thoughts are on the numbers, especially the ones that I just showed tonight. Tioga School with 2% proficient. 2%. I'm really curious on what your thoughts are. So I'd like to extend the invitation.
You probably should have said that before I said what I just said.
Well, it is what it is. So I finally got it. I'm sorry, I'm kind of babbling, and I finally got this. And let me try and share this. So this is something that we're dealing with up here. Let me see if I can. I gotta get better at this. I do apologize. Right there. Okay.
Pull the lever, Crunk.
Huh?
I said, pull the lever, Crunk.
So this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with up here. We get stuff like this. I stand behind the Williston Basin School District Number 7 School Board. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And I know her name's on there, but that's okay. This is what we're dealing with. So, at any rate, that's about all I have for tonight. So,
it's been a long, cold day, folks.
so
sweet Shiloh.
On Tuesday's show, though, I think we should talk a little bit about accountability, because it kind of sounds like there's different standards for different people, and this is some of the problem as well. I mean, we all know what they're trying to do to Nico, and again, what Nico did, I'm not condoning, but we've got a lot of other people in the same boat that seem to get a pass, and then they want to talk about Mr. Doctor getting due process and all of this bull jive. But I guess my question is where was Luke Simons's due process?
Shiloh, did you know North Dakota Century Code 440901 impeachment reasons for for state officials? So reasons are subject to impeachment and may be impeached for habitual drunkenness, crimes, corruption, misconduct, maleficence, or misdemeanor in office.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I was reading comments.
Reasons for impeachment. This is just statewide elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
Are habitual drunkenness, crimes, corrupt conduct, maleficence, or misdemeanor in office. So those are the 5 impeachable offenses according to 440901 in our Century Code. Huh. I don't know.
Only one's looking at it. It's just
I'm over rules for thee and not for me.
Mm-hmm.
The double standard needs to stop, and especially if they want to sit and call out that we should have a better vetting process for our candidates. Well, how about we look at the people that are already sitting in office too, folks?
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
You know what? You should run for DPI or run for treasurer.
No.
Wait, no. If I do another statewide office, my wife's going to murder me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure your wife will murder you if you do statewide office.
Well, it's not her that I'm worried about it, but
she won't actually murder me, folks. I'm okay. Very much so.
Shoot. No. But no, I'm extending that invitation to Mr. Junt. If you're watching this, or someone's watching it for you and reporting back to you, the invitation still stands. I'd like to know some more about, what your feeling is on the numbers, your proficiency scores, why you seem to think that parents shouldn't show up to the school board meetings, and why you feel that the people of Williston have spoke, because 1,300 people isn't the town of Williston. I'm sorry. And truth be known, most of those people who voted in the election were probably the teachers that got told to go vote. I mean,
anyway.
But all right. Well, with that, Tuesday night, we have Mr. Ben Koppelman and his running mates. We will speak to them on their bid for re-election. Remember, if you're in District 8, your guys' convention is tomorrow. Endorsing convention is tomorrow at 1 p.m. down there in Hazleton, right?
As far as I know, that hasn't been canceled.
It hasn't been canceled?
No, as far as I know, it has not.
That's good.
Even though it's going to be god-awful cold tomorrow. I'm planning on not leaving the house.
Oh, come on now.
District 47 will be January 31st, so mark that one down. District 30 is January 24th. We'll be posting more of the endorsing conventions as we see them, folks. So
You bet.
it's important to get to these, even if you don't have legislative candidates running, because this is when they choose the seats for the state convention. So
The delegates, yep.
if you want to be a delegate, you need to be to your district conventions.
Yes, sir. Well, with that, everybody enjoy their fireplaces if you have them. If not, you're going to have to be like me and have a coal-powered fireplace plugged into the wall. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you here back on Here's the Deal on Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock Central. Have a good one.
Y'all have a great night.